A month ago, my sister called me up with a request. She's got 3 kids, a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and was planning a weekend anniversary getaway with her husband. They're both busy, and with 3 young kids, they don't get a lot of time to themselves, so I totally understood her wanting a break. I love my nieces and nephew, and even though I'm not exactly in parent mode myself, I was more than willing to step up for them. But here's the thing, my job isn't exactly flexible. I work long hours, often pulling late nights or taking on extra shifts to keep things running smoothly. So when my sister asked if I could look after her 3 kids ages 10, 7, and 5 for an entire weekend, I knew it would take some serious schedule shuffling on my part. Much as I love my nieces and nephew, the idea of wrangling 3 young kids by myself for a couple of days was no small feat. And it's not just a matter of spending time with them. I can handle the games, the snacks, the movies, but making sure I had all the energy, time, and focus required to keep up with them and make it a great experience, while also staying sane enough to jump back into my work schedule right after, that needed planning. So I told her I'd be happy to do it, but laid down one very clear condition. I needed at least 2 weeks' notice. That way, I'd have time to ask my boss for time off, rearrange my projects, and clear my calendar completely. I wanted to give the kids my full attention and still keep my professional responsibilities in line. She agreed, almost offhandedly, as if 2 weeks wasn't a big deal, and that was that. I thought we had an understanding. She sounded grateful, and I was happy to help. Fast forward a couple of weeks, I'd worked things out with my boss, rearranged some deadlines, and basically locked down my entire weekend. I even made a bit of an event out of it. I stocked my place with everything I thought the kids might want or need. I went to the store and filled up my fridge with snacks, healthy ones for the most part, but also some treats because, well, they're kids and deserve a little weekend indulgence. I thought about what would keep each of them entertained. I bought a few craft supplies, found some old board games from my childhood, and even picked up some small toys. I remembered my niece loves dinosaurs, so I grabbed a little dino figurine, and I thought my 5-year-old nephew might enjoy a new puzzle set. Just the small stuff, but I wanted to make sure they'd feel welcome and have a good time. I had also planned a few activities for us, a cozy movie night, a trip to the park, and baking cookies from scratch, which I thought could be a bit messy but fun. I went all out getting some extra ingredients and making sure I had aprons, mixing bowls, and kid-sized utensils so we could make it into a real project. I pictured us decorating the cookies, laughing as we got frosting everywhere, and them going home with a stash of their very own homemade treats. By Friday afternoon, I was ready and excited. I'd even turned down invites from friends who wanted to go out that weekend. Normally, I'd be all in, but I figured I'd be exhausted after a weekend of babysitting and wanted to give my full attention to the kids. I set up my place, getting their little sleeping arrangements sorted and making sure each of them would have their own space. I double-checked everything, and then I waited, looking forward to hearing their little voices and seeing the joy on their faces when they realized I had all this set up just for them. As the hours ticked by, I texted my sister to check in, just to confirm what time she'd be dropping them off. I even added, excited to see the kids. Then, out of nowhere, I get this text from her that felt like a slap in the face. She just casually told me they weren't coming anymore, as if it was no big deal. Apparently, at the last minute, they decided to go to a family-friendly resort instead. The message was so brief, so matter-of-fact, like it was just a small change in plans. No apology, no thank you for all the planning I'd done, just a quick, "We'll do it another time." That was it. She canceled the entire plan with zero consideration for the time and effort I'd poured into making this weekend happen. Suddenly, my whole weekend was free, but not in the kind of way that felt freeing or exciting. It was empty in the worst way possible, like I'd prepped everything only to end up with absolutely nothing to do. I just sat there, looking around at my house, which now felt ridiculously overprepared. My fridge was full of snacks and food I wouldn't eat alone, a whole stockpile meant for the kids, and the games, craft supplies, and puzzles I'd bought just felt like a reminder of the plans that were never going to happen. I'd put everything else on hold for this weekend, completely rearranged my work schedule, and had turned down plans with friends because I thought I'd be busy taking care of my nieces and nephew. And now, there I was, with a house prepared for kids who weren't coming and a weekend wide open for plans I no longer had. I'll be honest, I was frustrated. I couldn't shake how inconsiderate the whole thing felt. All the effort, time, and money I'd spent preparing for their stay, only for her to decide, last minute, that they were going somewhere else instead. I thought about all the texts we'd exchanged, where she'd assured me that the weekend was set in stone and that she wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I thought about how I'd gone out of my way to make this happen, rearranging my entire weekend and even letting my boss know I'd need the time. It was as if none of that mattered to her, like she hadn't even stopped to consider what I'd done to make this possible. It was just a choice for her, a casual change in plans, but for me, it meant my weekend and everything I prepared was tossed out the window. So, I shot back a text saying it wasn't cool to cancel last minute, especially when I'd gone out of my way to accommodate her. I didn't say anything harsh, but I wanted her to know that I was disappointed, that it wasn't right to leave me hanging after I'd done so much to prepare. Her response, absolute silence. No sorry, no explanation, nothing. Just radio silence, as if my frustration was somehow unreasonable, or as if my time wasn't worth acknowledging. For a while, I sat there, waiting for a response, wondering if maybe she just needed a moment to realize what she'd done. Part of me thought maybe she'd be embarrassed or feel bad after reading my message, that she'd understand why I was upset and reach out to make it right. But the minutes ticked by, and there was nothing. Eventually, I let it go, chalking it up to one of those times family messes up and leaves you hanging. I tried to shake off the frustration, tell myself it wasn't worth holding on to, and salvage what I could of the weekend, hoping maybe I could make the best of this unexpected free time. Then, as if the universe couldn't twist things anymore, she calls me on Sunday. I'll admit, when I saw her name pop up on my phone, I almost felt a flicker of relief, like maybe she'd come to her senses and realized that canceling last minute after everything I'd done wasn't fair. Maybe, I thought, she was reaching out to apologize, or even just acknowledge that I'd gone out of my way to make her weekend plans happen and that she'd dropped the ball. A simple, hey, I know I messed up, I'm really sorry, would have gone a long way. But no, that's not what happened. Instead, with no hint of apology in her tone, she jumps right into asking if I can watch the kids the next weekend. Apparently, her family-friendly resort idea had somehow fallen apart. The same resort she was so eager to bail on me for had suddenly become an issue, and now, she was back at square one, scrambling for childcare. And the tone in her voice, the assumption that I'd be ready and willing to just step right back into the plan, felt almost insulting. It was as if she thought she could just slot me in whenever she needed, like my life was a calendar she could shuffle around to suit her needs. I could practically feel my blood pressure rise as she kept talking, like a wave of irritation washing over me. All the frustration from Friday came rushing back, and this time, it was tenfold. Did she really expect me to rearrange everything again after canceling on me without a second thought? Did she not realize that, just like her, I have a life, responsibilities, and commitments? She was asking me to drop everything again, to step in as the backup plan when hers didn't work out. The sheer lack of respect in the ask itself made me feel like she saw my time as something she could just take for granted. So I took a breath and told her no, I wasn't available. Simple, straightforward, no extra details because frankly, I didn't feel like I owed her any. I didn't feel the need to explain myself or offer up excuses. After all, she hadn't respected my time enough to give me one when she canceled. She did not take it well. Immediately, I could hear the tone shift in her voice as she started going on about how I was being selfish and punishing her kids for something that wasn't their fault. Her words poured out like accusations, as if I was somehow the bad guy in this situation. And with each new claim, each layer of guilt she tried to lay on, I felt myself getting more irritated. I tried to stay calm, but I told her flat out that it wasn't about the kids. It was about her lack of respect for my time and the way she treated my commitment as something disposable. But she wasn't hearing it. She just kept pushing, saying things like you don't understand what it's like to be a parent, and things come up all the time when you have kids. Her tone was this mix of defensiveness and entitlement. Like she believed her role as a parent meant everyone around her should be ready to jump in whenever needed. The implication that I, as someone without kids, somehow couldn't understand or appreciate how life worked was infuriating. She was trying to make it sound like I was incapable of empathy or flexibility just because I hadn't gone through parenthood myself. But in my mind, there's a world of difference between being flexible and being treated like an afterthought. And honestly, it wasn't like I didn't get that parenting comes with unpredictability. I've seen enough friends and family struggle with last-minute changes and issues that pop up out of nowhere. But just because things are challenging doesn't mean you get to treat people's time as if it doesn't matter. I had agreed to help with the understanding that she'd respect our arrangements, but now she was acting like I was some on-call backup she could just reach out to whenever her other plans fell through. And I wasn't willing to set that precedent. It was clear she wasn't getting it, and the more she talked, the clearer it became that, to her, this was my fault. My parents got involved not long after. Of course, they'd already heard my sister's side of things, which meant by the time they reached out to me, it was clear they'd already made up their minds about who was in the wrong. I barely got a word in before they were practically guilt-tripping me over the phone, acting like I was the one who'd let the family down. They started with the usual, telling me I should be more understanding because, apparently, this is just what it means to be family. It felt like every sentence was a subtle jab, each one adding another layer to the idea that, as family, I was somehow obligated to be on standby for whatever my sister needed, no matter what. My mom, in particular, didn't hold back. She launched into this monologue about how I wouldn't understand until I have kids of my own. It was as if she was saying that, without kids, my time was somehow less valuable. She went on about how my sister just wanted a break and needed some support, like those facts alone should make everything okay. In her eyes, I should have simply brushed off the last-minute cancellation and been willing to do it all over again, without a second thought. She painted this picture of my sister as a mom just trying to catch her breath, almost like I was somehow out of line for expecting any consideration at all. I could feel the weight of their expectations in every word she said, this unspoken pressure to fall in line because that's what family does. The worst part, they acted like my sister's behavior was perfectly normal and that I was completely unreasonable to expect even a basic acknowledgement of my effort. The way they dismissed the entire situation, treating it like I was overreacting for wanting a simple apology or even just a bit of respect for my time, was maddening. My mom kept saying things like, "You're just an uncle," as if that somehow downgraded my commitment, my time, and the energy I'd put into rearranging my entire weekend. It was as if, because I'm just an uncle, my plans, and even my willingness to help, were insignificant compared to the fact that my sister was a parent. They saw her as needing help, and anything I'd done or gone through was secondary to that. And look, I get it, things happen. I know emergencies pop up out of nowhere, and sometimes people genuinely need to cancel. But this wasn't an emergency. This wasn't a sudden crisis or anything unavoidable. My sister didn't cancel because of a problem with the kids or because something went wrong. She chose, willingly, to take her family somewhere else last minute, and she didn't even think it necessary to give me a proper heads up or say thank you for the trouble I'd already gone through. It wasn't about being unable to drop the kids off, it was a personal choice on her end. And the fact that she didn't even think to acknowledge everything I'd done showed me exactly how she viewed my time as disposable, something she could disregard whenever a more appealing option came along. So here I am, stuck in this situation where I feel like I'm walking a tightrope. I love my nieces and nephew deeply, and I've always wanted to be there for them whenever I could. But at some point, it feels like enough is enough. How much more am I supposed to offer? How much more of my time and effort am I expected to give without any acknowledgement or respect in return? I don't want to be the kind of person who sets boundaries with family, especially with kids involved. But it feels like I'm constantly being asked to sacrifice without a second thought, as if my life and my plans can always be put on hold. Update. The following Friday evening, just as I was settling into the weekend, my phone lit up with a call from my parents. I wasn't expecting to hear from them, especially not after our last conversation, but I picked up, figuring they might have calmed down enough to see my side of things. Instead, What I got was something out of left field, the kind of curveball that would make anyone question if they were in some bizarre family sitcom. My mom's voice came through cheerful and calm, like there hadn't been any tension at all in the past week. She launched right into it, saying, "Don't worry, we spoke to your sister, and everything is all set for this weekend." At first, I assumed she meant they were going to help her out with childcare, maybe finally taking a bit of the load off me. But as she kept talking, I realized, with an increasing sense of dread, that she wasn't talking about taking the kids herself. No, she was talking about me taking them. She explained, almost like she was delivering good news, that they had sorted it out with my sister and agreed that she would bring the kids over to my place for the weekend. I was floored. It took me a second to process what she just said. Here I was, having made it perfectly clear that I wasn't available, and now I was being told that everything was arranged and that the kids would be dropped off regardless of my plans. The audacity of it left me stunned, like I was in some kind of prank where everyone was in on the joke but me. My sister had managed to go around me, enlist my parents, and somehow conspire to convince me into babysitting, except no one had actually asked me or bothered to check if I was available. It felt like they'd set everything in motion without so much as a second thought about my time or my own life, like I was a pawn in this little scheme of theirs. When I finally found my voice, I tried to explain that I couldn't do it this weekend. I already had plans I wasn't about to cancel for the third time because of last-minute demands from my sister. I told them I'd be out with friends, away from home, and had no intention of clearing my schedule for something that was never actually discussed with me. But my mom brushed off my protest as if it were a trivial detail, almost like I hadn't spoken at all. She said that it didn't matter if I was out or had plans. The kids would be arriving anyway, so I should just make sure to be there. Then, without so much as a goodbye, the call ended. I stood there, phone in hand, baffled by what had just transpired. It was as if my own wishes, my plans, didn't exist in their world. I was expected to be at home, to drop everything yet again, and to simply accept this decision they'd made on my behalf. My frustration, already simmering from the previous conversation, now hit a boiling point. I felt like they were pushing me to my limit, disregarding me completely, expecting me to just fall in line as the helpful family member whenever it was convenient for them. The next morning, I made a decision. If they wanted to treat my time as if it didn't matter, then I would do exactly what I'd planned. Go out with my friends, enjoy the weekend I'd set aside for myself, and not worrying about whatever agreement my parents thought they'd made. I wasn't about to sacrifice yet another weekend, especially not one that was sprung on me last minute. I felt a small thrill of rebellion as I left my place that day, determined not to let them dictate how I spent my time. And sure enough, just a few hours later, my phone rang again. It was my mom, and I braced myself, fully expecting an angry lecture about how irresponsible and selfish I was being. I thought she was calling to demand why I wasn't home or to guilt-trip me into going back. But instead, she sounded oddly calm. She said my sister had canceled the plans because, apparently, something had changed at the last minute, and she didn't need me to watch the kids after all. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of it all. Here they were, expecting me to rearrange my entire life on their whim, only for my sister to cancel yet again because her own plans had changed. After everything, the calls, the guilt, the behind-my-back arrangement, they still didn't end up needing me. It was like the universe's way of pointing out just how absurd the situation had become. But what really got me was when my mom casually added that I should still be ready in case my sister needed me again soon. As if they expected me to remain on standby indefinitely, waiting for the next time my sister's plans fell through. The whole thing had turned into a comedy of errors, a cycle of last-minute demands, cancellations, and zero consideration for anyone but themselves. That weekend felt like a turning point for me. I'd been yanked around, guilt-tripped, and manipulated to the point where it became crystal clear that I had to set firmer boundaries. I wasn't about to drop everything for vague promises of maybe needing help later or scramble to meet their expectations on a whim. After that, I decided that unless my sister could show me some basic respect and actually communicate with me instead of through my parents or expecting me to be on call, I wasn't going to let them treat my time like it was theirs to command.